We are going to review linear functions in this video. We'll start out with a review of graphing lines. First, we'll start out with a line in y equals mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form. So we're going to look at number 2 first. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. I like to say that you begin with b, and that's going to be on the y-axis. So in this case, it would be -2 on the y-axis is your first point. And then you move with m. So your slope is -1/5. You can write that as -1/5 or 1/5. They mean the same thing. If you have the negative sign on the top of your fraction, then that means you're going to go down and right. If you write it the other way, you would be going up and left. So, from our original point on -2, we're going to go down 1 and right 5. So that would give us this point right here. You could also go up and left. Up 1 and left 5 will give us that point right there. And then you connect them to make your line. So with question 1, it's the same idea. The information is just given to you in a different format. They told you what the y-intercept was. So the y-intercept was -1. So we're going to start at -1 on the y-axis. And then your slope was -1/3. You can write that as -1 divided by 3 or 1 divided by -3. They mean the same thing. If you put the negative sign on the top of your fraction, you would go down and then we would go right. If it was on the bottom, we would go up and left. So, from our original point at -1, we're going to go down 1 and right 3. Land us here. Or you could go up 1 and left 3. Would put us there. Connect your points, make your line. This question also asks us to write the equation. So just put each of those values into y equals mx plus b. So y equals, your slope is -1/3, so -1/3 x. And then your b value, the y-intercept is -1, so -1. So let's look at a couple questions in standard form. So here, we need to convert each of those equations into y equals mx plus b. So number 3, that's our original equation. We want to solve for y, so we're going to subtract x from both sides. Then I would have 3y is equal to -x minus 3. We can't combine them, they are not like terms. Then I would still have to divide everything by 3. So your equation would look like y equals -1/3x minus 1. And that fraction comes from having that negative invisible 1 on the top, and then -3 divided by 3 is -1. So that's where we got that -1 from. So this is what we would then have to graph. So we'll start at -1, and then go down 1 to the right 3, or you can go up 1 to the left 3. That gives you your line. So with number 4, we'll take our equation. We're going to start by subtracting 3x from both sides. So we have -y is equal to -3x plus 5. And then we have an imaginary 1 here. So we're going to divide everything by -1. So our equation is going to look like y equals 3x minus 5. and that's what we're going to graph. So we're going to start at -5 on the y-axis, and we're going to go up 3, and then turn that into a fraction. Up 3, and then to the right 1. You can keep going if you would like to get a couple more points. And that is your line. So the last question that I want to look at talks about taking a word problem and reading into it and figuring out what the equation could be that the word problem represents and what the slope and the y-intercept of those equations are. So this problem says the water level of a river is 34 feet and it is receding, which means to get smaller, at a rate of 0.5 feet per day. Write an equation that represents the water level W after days D. Identify the slope and the y-intercept. So the problem gives us our variables. It says that W stands for the water level, and that D stands for the amount of days. So we're going to look at our equation. We want the equation to represent the water level. So we want it to be W equals, now to find the water level, we start out at 34 feet. So you can kind of imagine that as the y-intercept because that's where we're starting. So we're starting at 34 feet. And then each day we're losing half a foot. So we're going to go down half a foot each day. That's going to represent our slope. So you can make the slope 0.5 x. But since we're going down, we're losing, receding, getting smaller, it has to be a negative slope. So that's what our equation would look like. W equals -0.5 x plus 34. And I'm actually going to change that x to a D to represent our days. So we start out at a 34-foot level, and then we go down half a foot each day. So that's where that equation is coming from. So our slope is 1/2, and it's negative, -1/2. Or you could put -0.5. And the y-intercept is 34, because that is what we're starting out at.